welcome to this webinar, Lifting the Hood on Fme Engine 2022. My name is Mark Island. I am the Fme evangelist, and I will be presenting today with...
I'm Andrea Eisma. I'm a technical support team lead on Fme Desktop. And yeah, Mark and I will be showing some highlights and deeper dives into some of the new features for Fme 2022.
Yeah. And we have with us at the moment Elizabeth. Elizabeth is our trusty webinar organizer and manager, and everything to do with webinar.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I'm excited to be joining you guys today.
Does a great job. I should also say thanks to the graphics team at Safe for that lovely. They made that sort of icon image thing of me, which it's like, wow, that's why. Yeah, that's why I just don't have my regular
Comic
photo
version.
there. Yeah,
comic version of you, Mark.
it is. Yes, I was just looking at the little white highlight on my nose, whether it's almost like a little spot there. So anyway, the important thing today is, Andrea, socks or sporks?
That's a tough one.
And
yeah,
launch the poll. Can you do that for us, Elizabeth? We have a poll for folk online if you want to, because you may know, if you're familiar with us and Fme, we have Fme sporks and we have Fme socks. And which do you prefer? And this is always a contentious issue. I put a poll on LinkedIn once, and it got very close. And I wouldn't say people were arguing about it, but they definitely had their opinions on what they liked.
Definitely, both are very sought after items when you're coming to one of our events, such as our world tour events.
Yeah, when I go to a conference, not necessarily an Fme conference, any conference, I need to take a big supply of sporks with me because they go really quickly. People snap them up.
I will say we are like even, like theirs hasn't been too much of a sway. It's pretty even between socks and sporks.
Shall we close that? And share the results. There we go. So socks are the winner, but only just. So why not sporks and socks is the question in the chat. So that's true, actually. Yes.
I mean, we shouldn't really be pitting them against each other, I suppose.
No.
But...
It's like pitting Zipster against the lizard.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what are we looking at today apart from sporks and socks? Well, we are going to go through this agenda. I'm going to look at geometry transformers first of all, the Schema Scanner, and then the encoding support we have in 2022. And then we're going over to Andrea. And what are you going to cover?
Yeah, I'm going to be giving an overview of the Esri reprojector, a little sneak peek into the cloud optimized Geotiff, some SQLite, spatial light, as well as our Upserts.
Yeah, and the cloud optimized Geotiff, I think, is that seems to be the big buzzword right now. So it's very, I'm looking forward to seeing that.
Yeah. Before we dive in, maybe worth noting as well, we have Trent joining us on the back end. So if you have
of course.
Definitely drop questions into the question panel. Thanks, Trent, for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Trent. Okay, well, we should probably talk about safe software and Fme, just in case any of you folk are new to us. We produce a product called Fme, which is a data integration tool. And our real strength is in spatial data. So we are probably the data, well, not probably, I think we certainly are the data integration tool with the greatest support for spatial data. And yeah, so a bit about SAFE. It says 27 years of solving data challenges. It's closer to 29 now, I think, because we were founded in 1993. Yeah, we've spread worldwide. We've got plenty of customers in lots of different countries and partners around the world helping to make use of that product. And nearly 20,000 users in the community. I'm keeping an eye on that to reward and note our 20,000th user in the Fme community. So if you're not a member, go sign up, community.safe.com. And yes, that is our office, not the entire building, just like the first top 4 or 5 floors, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think at this point we can probably turn off our webcams just to save on some bandwidth.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you don't need to see us. Yeah, so Fme is a data integration platform, which basically means we've got a number of products that make up that. Fme Desktop is what we're going to be looking at mostly today. You just build and run processes on your, well, locally. Fme Server is a way to integrate data on an enterprise-wide platform. So working with servers and automations and things like that. Then there's Fme Cloud, which is the cloud version of Fme Server, and you can fire up machines at will with an unlimited number of engines, and yeah, run all your processes really quick on there. And then we do have a couple of mobile apps as well. One of them is to manage your Fme server and run things on it from your device. And another one is to do augmented reality, because we do write that data and you can view that data in our mobile app. And yeah, it looks pretty amazing when you do that. And yeah, and you can see these are the different types of data we've supported over the years. So from about 2000 onwards, that's when we really just standard data, and we've gone on from that to do 3D and raster, and all the way up through indoor mapping and virtual reality and even machine learning at this point as well. So I don't know what the next big thing is going to be, but we'll be there for sure. And we are on the Gartner quadrant, so if you would like to give them your feedback, I'm sure you can look that up on our website, and you can take part in the Peer Insights program to tell them how good or whatever you think about us. You can let them know. And, yeah, we do value that feedback for sure. Okay, well, let's get down to the actual work. So what I'm going to do first is look at the Tiler transformer as an example of something that's new in 2022, or new engine, shall we say. And what have we got that's updated? Well, it's got a completely new underlying factory, which is how I can say it's got a new engine. The factory, and we'll look at this shortly, is sort of the underlying functionality behind transformers. And so we're going to take a look at those just as a glimpse under the hood, really looking down into the engine of Fme. And we'll look at that shortly. There's a new version of the transformer as well, which we'll look at. And we'll look at what that means as well to you when you're upgrading to 2022. Simpler logging, the developers don't really mention that much. I don't think marketing do either, but by rewriting a lot of this code and creating this new factory and a new version of the transformer, the logging is way simpler now. And I wanted to show you that as well, because that really is what you use for debugging, and it's way better now. We've improved handling of 3-dimensional features, and I'll demonstrate what I mean by that as well. But basically, when you tile something in 3 dimensions, it's a lot better result. And the performance has improved vastly as well. And again, we'll see just how much that has improved. So let's just go straight into the demo. I don't like to talk too much. We want to do demos. So what have we got? Well, I got Fme 2021 on the left and 2022 on the right. And the first demo I've got is just taking the land boundary of Vancouver. Let me expand that. So we've got the land boundary of the city of Vancouver, which is just sort of an outline of the city. And we are going to tile that up into pieces, and the pieces are going to be 100 meters wide. So this is Fme 2021. and it's running through that, and we can start the same thing on Fme 2022, and it should just about beat. Oh no, it didn't quite beat that. 7.8 seconds. I mean, it beat it. It only took 0.9 of a second in 2022. I thought I could start it later and run a race. Even though it started later, it would still win, but it was close. Anyway, so yeah, 0.9 of a second in 2022 against 8 seconds nearly in 2021. So you can see there's an 8-fold performance improvement in that. Performance improvement varies depending on all sorts of different things and different scenarios. But in most cases, things are going to be way faster in 2022. We talked about the engine and how we figure how that works and how factories work. So you can think of Fme as being a core engine and geometry model, and above that we've got a layer of what we call factories and functions, which you don't really get to see a great deal about, because really you're more interested in the next layer up, which is transformers. Really, we only needed to worry about factories and functions when we back in the days before Workbench, when we had to write the scripts manually. That's when we used those. But we can still see what factories are being used under the hood. And I figure this is a good way to demonstrate what actually goes on in an Fme workspace. So what I can do is I can copy a transformer and I can paste it into a text editor, or I can just paste it into an annotation in here. And what does that show me? Well, it shows me what's going on underneath that transformer. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit, I think. So that's all of the things that's going on under that transformer. That's the transformer definition for the tiler. If I zoom in a bit, you can see it tells you what the factories are underneath. So it starts with a test factory that says, are we handling solids here? If we are, do something. Is it a point cloud? Do something else. And we roll through here. We've got another test factory, the bounding box factory, the clipping factory, a few more test and T factories. So basically, there's a lot of things going on under there, and that's reflected in the log window as well. If we look at the log, you can see. So that's sort of what some of these messages mean. You can see here it starts saying Tiler T factory. Let's see, Tiler clipping factory, test factory. So all of those things that were defined there are what appears in the log window. So that sort of gives you an idea of what's going on under the hood. In 2022, if we do the same thing, all I'm doing is press Control-C, Control-K, Control-V, copy and paste the transformer into an annotation. When I do that, you can see it's way simpler in there. And you can see we've now got a special factory called the Tiler factory. And that's basically what does the tiling now. So we don't do all of these other factories, we just do this one specialized thing, which is why it's a lot quicker. And it's why the log file is a lot simpler now. It just says Tiler factory, tiling this data with this tolerance. And that's about all you need to know. So yeah, it's cleaned up the logging very much just by having that. What else can I say about it? Oh, the transformer version as well. So if I look at the summary annotation for a transformer, like I do Control-Shift-K, that shows me information about the transformer, and that's telling me that that tiler is version 10. If I do the same thing in 2022, it should tell me it's version 11. So we've got a new version of the tiler. So what does that mean? Well, it means that if you want to get the full benefits out of the performance improvement and all the other functionality of that, you need to upgrade your transformers. Like if I copy this transformer from 2021 and paste it into 2022, oops, I didn't really need the annotation to come with it, but there it is. So that's the one I've copied over. You can see it's still version 10. So if I actually ran that, connected it up and ran it, it will still run with the same performance that it had in 2021. Why do we do that? Well, that's for backwards compatibility. So we make sure that nothing changes unless you tell it to change. So I can right click on that now and say update this transformer, upgrade it. It tells me what the differences are. I click OK, and now it's version 11. You can see in the annotation it says version 11. And now if I run it, it should run way quicker again, like so. So yeah, so the point there is if you open an old workspace in a new FME, quite often you have to do that upgrade to get the full benefit of the functionality and performance. And if you look in the navigator window, it will tell you when there's transformers that could be updated. So keep an eye out for that. So yeah, so that's some of the general things about the tiler. One of the specific things was I mentioned about three-dimensional data being improved. I'm just going to run that while I'm doing this. So yeah, so if we look at that, well, it was basically a three-dimensional shape. I'm moving my hands around and you can't see because my webcam's not on, but it was a sloped polygon. It wasn't a plain polygon. So if I look at the source in 3D, you can sort of see it was a bit of a slope to it. And when we tiled it, it looks okay, but when you look in 3D, oh, the Z values are all over the place. So it was a bit of a problem in 2021. And we can see that I generated a tin there and for an elevation model. And I'm just going to put that into 3D. If it will show me. Let's open that up in the data inspector. The point is 2021, it had holes in basically. So you can see if I just flip to 3D, we should see those same holes in there because the Z values are a bit messed up. And obviously that's not so great for an elevation model like that. Luckily in 2022, we don't have that problem. If I look at the output there in 3 dimensions, all the Z values are together. It's basically tiled it properly and interpolated where the Z value should be, and everything's good. And again, I can do the same thing with the tin model that I created from a DEM, and I basically tiled it up into tiles, I suppose. And but this time it's all interpolated the Z values correctly, and there's no holes that we can see in that coverage. So yeah, so the handling of 3D data is way better in 2022. So yeah, that's tiling. What I'm going to do now is look at the next transformer on my list. Oh, performance testing. I should mention this as well, just to give you an idea of how fast some of this is. With 100-meter tiles, it was about 6 seconds in 2021, half a second in 2022 when I tested it. When I went down to 10-meter tiles, so there were way more of them, excuse me, it actually ran, well, way quicker. 2022 was just 12 seconds and 2021 took, well, nearly 12 minutes. So the performance improvement is immense in that. And, so that's what we're trying to do. Raster mosaicing as well, raster tiling, I should say, not mosaicing. Well, no, I was tiling a raster mosaic, whatever. Tiling that, you turn off caching because caching really affects the performance when you're dealing with raster data. So that's one tip for today. If you're dealing with raster, turn off caching if you can, because it will slow things down. And you can see again that it was way quicker to do that tiling in 2022. And the more tiles you create, the more the faster the difference, the bigger the relative difference is. And the same thing with the elevation model. It took 18 seconds in 2021 to do 200 by 200 tiles, and again way quicker in 2022. And it gave a slightly different number of tiles as well, 2022. The reason there is we've been working on the tolerance as well. So, and that's one of the reasons we make you upgrade to that transformer when you open it in your new FME, because we want to make sure that it would give you the same results as before, and now it's giving you slightly different because the tolerance is just handled a little bit better than before. So anyway, the next transformer I wanted to look at was the Clipper. Again, that had a new powerful engine applied to it. I don't want to go into too much detail because we just did a webinar entirely about the Clipper. But what I can say is it's got that completely new underlying factory again, just as the Tiler has, and a new version of the transformer as well. So again, you really need to upgrade your transformers in FME 2022 to get the benefits of this functionality. There's new options for output. It's not just performance. There are lots of other options as well that are on there. And it's got improved geometry support. By that I mean, well, clipping is like cookie cutting, and normally you would say, excuse me, take one polygon and clip it or cut it against another polygon. But with FME 2022, the range of geometries you can do is much wider. So you could say clip a polygon using the boundary of a raster, or you could clip a surface using a polygon outline, that sort of thing. So there's a lot more support in there as well. And again, that full webinar we did on the transformer would give you all of that information. So have a look at that webinar. And maybe Elizabeth, oh yeah, there you go. You shared that one already. You're well in front of me there. So check out the recording of that webinar if you want the full details. What I'm going to show today, though, is one of these new output options, because I think it's really important. And if you did miss that webinar, then it would be worth knowing about this. And the new output option is, well, what do you want the clippers to do if they overlap? So one of the classic examples I've seen is, say you've got a bunch of, if you've taken aerial photos, for example, and you've got the outlines of where the aerial photos are, and you want to clip some data underlying them. Well, they always, a flight line always has a certain amount of overlap. So do you want the features that are clipped inside that overlap, do you want them to be part of Clipper 1 or part of Clipper 2 or part of both of them? And so this is what that setting allows you to do. And it'll probably be better once I start to demo it. So let's have a look at that. So I got to make sure, what are we in there? 2022. Okay, so let's open my 2022 Clipper. And I'm going to open the other one in 2021. Let's open the 2021 Clipper. So what we have here is we have a data set of what we call view cones. It's a planning thing. If I can just visualize that data for you. See, in Vancouver itself, we like the view so much that a lot of the views are protected against developing too big high rises in there. And each of these features here represents a view that's not allowed to have high rise development in it for whatever reason, because we want to see the mountains or whatever. So we've got all of those. And the other data set I've got is the parks in the city. And what I basically want to do is find out which parks fall inside which view cone. So that's what the Clipper is doing. It's dividing the parks up according to where it overlaps with the view cone. But the thing is, the parks, you can see we've got lots of view cones intersecting here. I zoom in a bit. But when we just look at the parks, you don't get that same intersection. And why that happens is because the first cone that comes along clips that part of the park, and then that part is taken off the table for the rest of the clipping. And then the next view cone comes along and it's only got this bit left or that bit left. And so some of the parts are missing from there. And that's not what I really want in this case. So in 2022, we have a new option, which I just showed you. And notice again, it runs way quicker in 2022. And we've got this option about overlapping clippers. Clip only outside, that's what the previous 2021 version would do by default. It's the only thing it could do. Whereas in 2022, we can say, let's just clip to the original candidates. And what that basically means is, if we look at the data again, you can see where all of the overlapping clippers were. They now each have their own piece of park. So we've overlapped against every clipper, not just what was left. Each clipper takes its own piece. So yeah, that's a big improvement over 2021. That's something I've really wanted for a long time. The ability to include in each separate clipper boundary the part that it clips, whether it's used by another clipper or not. So that I really wanted to demo that because that's a big improvement. It would really help. But again, look to the sort of webinar about how full details on how the clipper works. I should mention again, actually, if I go to the old clipper and do that trick of copying the transformer and pasting it into a text window, again, you can see there are a lot of things going on in there with T factories and test factories and solid intersection factories and things like that, and clipping factory. But again, 2022 doesn't have that issue. It has a much smaller footprint. It's only got a single clipper factory. So everything's concentrated in that same factory now. And again, the log makes it the log window is much simpler for that. So it just says clipper, clipping the data, storing the output, clipped, whatever. So yeah, again, the logging makes that it's worth upgrading just for the logging alone, I would say, let alone the performance and the functionality improvements. So yeah, that's just another look sort of under the hood, as it were, at what's going on. Okay, well, the next thing I wanted to look at was the Schema Scanner. And it says a new twist on an old engine, which is not entirely true. And notice it says new in quotes. So it's a completely new factory for a new transformer. Why am I saying that? Well, it is a new factory. The transformer was added in 2021, but it was like .1 or .2. And the functionality wasn't really full then. It was sort of in a beta version. Now the functionality has improved a lot. It is a new factory, but I talked to the developer and said, well, what does it do? What did you have to write? He said, well, I didn't really have to write any new code for handling that. All I did was sort of create this new factory to pull all these bits together from different parts of FME. So in other words, you could have done this sort of thing before, but you would have had to use lots of different transformers and maybe a bit of Python in there and all sorts of things. Whereas now we've got a transformer that does it for you. Well, what does it do? Well, it scans the schemas of features running through the workspace. It basically tells you what attributes it's got and what the attribute types are and things like that. So why is that useful? Well, excuse me, because that schema can then be used to set a dynamic output. Just to run through that very quickly, a dynamic translation is one where we don't know the schema until you hit the run button. And basically, what's the output data model? Well, it could be defined manually. In a dynamic translation, that data model is fetched from somewhere else. And with the Schema Scanner, we're saying it's fetched from inside the workspace itself. We're defining the schema using transformers inside the workspace. And it's got an incredible incredibly flexible set of uses because it lets you define things within the workspace without having to fetch it from somewhere else. You'll see what I mean in a second, because I'm going to do a demo of just one particular use that I found the other day that I thought was really quite interesting, and it's a good example. But before we do that demo, I wanted to just mention Utf Encoding in 2022, because again, we want to dive down into the engine, and if you did that, if you could physically see what was inside the Fme engine, you would see that we have better support for encoding. You would see everything in there in UTF-8 now. And that text there says, or according to Google Translate, it says, you wouldn't be able to do this in an older version of Fme. And this is pretty much true. So what do we do? Well, basically, we have full UTF support now for attribute values and attribute names. So if you have any non-ASCII characters in your data, like Japanese characters, or maybe it's a French E with an acute accent on it, or a Swedish umlaut, or whatever it is, we should be able to handle that. And it's not just in the data values, it's also in the names of the attributes as well. Because obviously they could have these special characters as well. So, and the whole workspace is now stored in UTF-8. I think it has been for quite a while, but now we're actually making use of that. We have this thing about backwards compatibility. So if you open up an older workspace in a newer Fme, we should be able to tell which encoding it was using at that time and make the switch to UTF-8 automatically. I mean, really, if it worked for you before, it'll work for you now. If it didn't work for you before, well, it should do now. And what it also does, it gives us compatibility across the whole Fme platform, which means if I create a workspace on my local machine, which has Windows, I don't know, 1292, is that the code page for Windows, ASCII? If I created a workspace locally using that encoding, Fme would store everything in UTF-8, so that if I uploaded it to Fme server or Fme Cloud on a Linux machine, it would still work on there. The encoding would still be fine. And that gives us better error detection and faster translations because we're not having to transcribe data between one thing and another. And we did a sneak peek live stream of that a couple of months ago now, and we were going to talk for about 10 minutes about encoding, and it ended up being 45 minutes because once you get starting on a subject like that, it's difficult to stop. So if you really want the full lowdown on everything from the developers, you can look at that sneak peek, and hopefully Elizabeth can share that link with you as well. But we're going to do a demo now, so let me fire up. Let's see, I don't think we only need 2022, we don't need 21. So let me open up my Schema Mapper. Schema Mapper emoji start. So why have I created with a new, oh, okay. I had the wrong Fme open there. There we go. So why did I call it emoji? Well, you can see if I zoom in that this person has got some source data, and actually let me go through what the workspace is doing. So we've got postcode boundaries at the top, we're reading some postal boundaries, and we are reading some other data like parks, libraries, community centers, and transit stations. And what we're trying to do is figure out what facilities lie inside each postcode boundary. So how many parks are in each postcode? So if I look at the postcode boundary, we've got V5T, V5Z, V6A, V6B, etc. And we want to find out how many libraries are in each area, how many parks, how many community centers, and so on. And that's what this point on area overlayer transformers does. It says find out how many parks are in each postcode boundary. But the person who did this workspace was thought they'd be really smart and they were going to use emojis for attribute names. Now, okay, I'm using emojis in this demo just to prove a point that we can do that. It just really proves to you the extent of how deep our encoding support works now, that we can use emojis in there. Normally it will be regular text, whether it's in Japanese or with the accents again, or just plain ASCII. But today I'm just doing it in emoji just to show you, just to prove the extent to which we can handle that. So basically what the user's done is they've written some data out and they fanned it out as well. So we've created a different file for each postcode. And if I double click one of those and open it up, we can see that it's written to CSV and it's written that postcode has got a park, it's got one park, it's got no libraries, no community centers, no transit stations. Whereas another one, 6 parks, 1 library, 1 community center, but no transit again. So that's what we're doing there. And that's an example of the encoding as well, because we've got, if I look at the encoding, you can see it's UTF-8 encoding in that file. So yeah, but what we really want to look at is a schema scanner. So what's our scenario here? Well, the scenario is the user said, what happens if something has no libraries in it or no community centers? If that's the case, I just don't want that field to appear in that output. So if I don't want that field to appear in the output, how am I going to achieve that? Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the Schema Scanner transformer. So let's see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a null attribute mapper transformer. And what this does, it just says, lets me create null values out of something else. So I'm just going to say, pick all of those attributes that we've created. If the attribute value is 0, then we're going to map it to missing. We're just going to say it's not there if it's 0. Now, just running that by itself isn't going to make the CSV output any different because the schema's fixed. So what I need to do is put a schema scanner down. I realize the time is running past very quickly, so I'm just going to do this very quickly as well. Schema scanner says, let's scan what we've got there. I'm going to ignore everything that begins with Fme. I think we do a pipe or multi, or what are we reading from? Shapefile. So anything that begins with shape, we're going to ignore those attributes. Case insensitive. If an attribute is empty or missing, we're going to ignore it. What happens now is we run that. We get, oh, actually, what I wanted to do was group by each different postcode, so we get a different schema for every one of those. So we've got 13 features, 13 schemas now. We've got a schema for each one. And if we look in the schema, it will tell us what was in there. So that one's got parks, but it obviously had nothing for libraries because the library field isn't in the schema. That one's got one of everything, so that must have had features in it in the overlap and so on. So all we're going to do now is say, well, take that schema, put it into there, put it into the output writer, change the output to be dynamic. We are just getting the schema from the schema features themselves. And let's get rid of all of the user attributes because now we're doing this dynamically. We don't need to worry about that. And I think that's it. And the schema definition name actually comes from the attribute. You'll see that that's created in here. It says Fme feature type name is the name of the schema, and it will get passed into there. So I'm going to run that translation. I'm going to look at the output. And now when I open up one of these files, let's see, which one are we going to open up? Okay, I'm looking at the output and it didn't quite work. So what have I done wrong there? Schema from schema feature, overwrite existing files. Well, oh, right. Okay, I didn't fan out properly by the feature type. That's what I did wrong. So I was looking at the old data there, I think. Now let's try it. Okay, that's better. So now I'm going to bring that across. You can see that we didn't have any community centers in there, so we didn't write the community center attribute because it was empty. And this one has some of everything. That one doesn't have any libraries in it, so the library attribute's missing. So basically now it's only writing the attributes that exist on the data, excluding the null ones, and that's what the Schema Scanner does. Sorry to run through this so quickly, but time really just started to get away from me there. So the schema enters the same port as the features. It has to arrive before the related features. And yeah, we need to set the dynamic schema to get the information from there. But yeah, go back to the actually I did a sneak peek on the Schema Scanner as well, so you can find that, and it will be beyond that. So okay, well I'm going to hand it over now. Sorry, Andrea, for taking up so much time. I thought I was doing well.
Oh, good.
Suddenly realized I wasn't. So okay.
No problem.
Okay,
well,
so,
thank you for taking us through a whirlwind of some of those geometry transformers with the update for the Tiler and the Clipper, as well as the schema encoding. That was pretty neat to see emojis being used there. The Esri reprojector is another transformer that we updated in 2022. It's updated to help you speed through time and reach new heights. So with this update, we added vertical and time-dependent transformers, as it's no longer about where something is located, but when. So with adding support for vertical and time-dependent, you can use time-based coordinates that will accommodate for continental drifts. These include coordinate systems such as the Australian terrestrial reference frame and the North American terrestrial reference frame as well. How does it do this? Well, it's transforming from one datum to another with setting a particular time. And you can do this in the update in the parameter. So we've added the epoch parameter, which you can see here. And you can specify the time frame that the source coordinate is in. And that will help you account for that time shift. As well as adding vertical reprojection. This is now standard in all of our reprojections. We knew the Esri reprojector didn't have the vertical transformation, so now we've added that in. If you want a more in-depth sneak peek, Mark did a live stream with the developer as well as the product manager. So we have a deeper dive into the Esri reprojector as well. Elizabeth, if you can chat out that link, that would be great.
For sure.
Thanks. Another update we've seen is Cloud Optimized Geotiff, also known as COG. This update will help you with processing data that you want. This was an idea that was posted in our community as well, so thanks to our community users for raising this. We're proud to be implementing this. So as I mentioned, we've added support. This is actually in the Geotiff reader itself, so it's not a new reader. It's just been implemented into the Geotiff reader. We've optimized the reader to download as much of the data of the raster as we need at the time that we need it. This does depend on what you're doing with the raster though. So if you are writing out the whole raster, then we will download the whole raster tile. But if you're only clipping a small portion of the raster, we'll only download that portion of the raster. I'm just going to jump into a demo to show you how improved this is, where you'll also get to see a peek at the performance boost from the Clipper as well. Just let my virtual machine start up. Went to sleep. Sorry about that. All right. So similar to what Mark was showing, is I'm going to show a little bit of comparison between 2021 and 2022. I'm going to go ahead and run 2021 because I know it's taking a little bit more time. And I'm going to run 2022. So what we're doing here is we are fetching data from an AWS bucket for Sentinel-2. We're fetching just one tile, and we're also creating the bounding box of Vancouver, and we're clipping the raster with that tile so that we are only getting the bounding box of Vancouver. So you'll notice I already gave 2021 a head start. It's still running, whereas 2022 has already finished. Just a few requirements for ensuring that the Geotiff reader is going to work with a cloud optimized Geotiff is that it must be a COG. It needs to be hosted on a server that's capable of HTTP range requests, and the reader needs to be supplied a URL. So you'll need to ensure that you're sending a URL into the Geotiff reader. And again, the main tip and takeaway is to ensure that you're processing your raster with the smallest portion of what you need first, meaning you should clip your data if needed early so that you can save on processing time. If I flip over, I'll also still see that 2021 is still running as it's still trying to fetch the full tile. Another update that we've seen is SQLite and Spatialite for 2022. In the reader, we have updated the parameter interface for a more harmonized look across our other database formats. We've improved our data types. There's now a built-in search envelope, and we've also added bulk modes support for performance. Our writer has also had a refresh to our parameter interface, again, to have a more harmonized look. We've added a spatial column, which you can set, as well as being able to set the SRID. There are also before and after SQL to run statements in the writer now. On the writer feature type, we have updated it to have our standard feature operation handling, as well as the match columns and per feature operations. In addition, we've also seen bulk mode support for performance added here as well. Another exciting update we've seen is Upserts, where we hope that this will help to improve your data so that you are minimizing any changes or possible duplicates with writing. So an Upsert will update an existing record, or if it doesn't exist, it will insert it into your database all in one step. This was a highly requested idea in our community, and we're now finally happy to say that we support this. This will help you with your workflows to update and insert, as well as streamlining your workspaces so you're not trying to figure out if a record has been updated or is new and needs to be inserted into the database. I'm going to go through a demo on Upserts with Spatialite format using some Formula 1 racing data, keeping on theme with our racing. We're going to be updating an existing Spatialite database with the most recent race results from Sunday's race in Italy. Just going to open up my workspace. So this is our workspace. I'm going to open up our data as well first. As you'll see, I'm using the data inspector, and I'm going to be reviewing our Formula 1 SQLite table. So reading this in, I can see that there are 20 drivers, 3 races, and 10 teams. I'm expecting there might be an update to the drivers just because we don't know if there might be any substitutes that have happened, and there should be an update to the races as well. There should be a 4th race. And we're going to be updating the ranking as well because after the race, each of the drivers placed in a new position, so their points have changed. So we're going to be updating those as well. And how we're doing that? Well, we're grabbing data from the Formula One site. They just have an HTML table, so we're grabbing that data. We're processing some attributes such as creating a unique identifier. This unique identifier is needed so that we can perform upsert properly. In order to do an upsert, you need to have a unique ID. So you'll see our feature operation is set to upsert. Table handling is create if needed. You could also set it to say use existing, but I have it to create if needed if it didn't exist. And our match column is unique ID. Another update that we've seen is you can specify the unique ID in the user attributes. So as I mentioned earlier in the workflow, I created the unique ID, but I also need to tell the writer that this is the unique attribute. And so you can just do this in this column here. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And we're fetching those updates for 2022. We can already see there's 21. So that means there was a substitute for a driver. And there are 4 races. And we've also updated our team standings. If we go and review this data in FME in the data inspector again, you can see I just ran this. We can see now there are 21 drivers. And I know we had number 14, Sebastian, was the added substitute. And we've also updated our races. So now we have the Italy race from Sunday inserted in. And we've updated our rankings for our teams. So if we look at before Sunday's race, the top 3 teams were Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull. Now our top 3 teams are Ferrari, Red Bull, and Mercedes. So Red Bull and Mercedes made a flip. So just to recap what we saw, as I mentioned, each feature requires a unique ID, which can be set in the SpatialLite or SQLite column in the attribute definitions. And currently we support this with our PostgreSQL and Postgres, SQLite, and SpatialLite. We are adding more formats soon, so stay tuned for a future release where we will be adding this to more databases. So Mark and I have both shown you a few deep dives into new improvements for FME 2022, from geometry improvements to upserts with databases, schema updates that include international characters, aka those fun emojis. We hope that these new features will help you process your data in a timely fashion so you can make decisions quicker, so you don't waste the value of your data by keeping it stuck. We'd love to talk to you about any of your data needs, so feel free to reach out to us. We'd also encourage you to try our latest beta of FME 2022 and stay tuned for our release. And hopefully you can apply some of these new updates that you've seen to your workflows. And a few resources, hopefully Elizabeth can chat these out, is we have that whole sneak peek playlist. I know Mark did a number of sneak peeks. And so we highlighted a few of those, such as the Esri projector, the encoding. I'd also encourage you to see a fuller picture of our 2022 highlights, and you can see that in our webinar. And we have a few articles for you as well if you want to learn more about how to work with the Schema Scanner, as well as the Upsert article. We have an article for working with Upserts too. If you're interested, we'd really like to have you part of our beta testing group. Please do reach out to our product manager, Claire. She'd be happy to add you to our beta testing group if you're interested in building plugins. And I believe this one's over to you, Mark, for community badge.
Right, yes, thanks. So yeah, on the FME community, I hope most of you are all signed up for that, community.safe.com. You can earn reputation points and you can earn virtual badges. And one of the things that you can earn badges for is taking part in webinars or attending webinars. So basically go to fme.ly/webinar badge, type in the name of your FME community username, you type in that code GPMSF, that's the code for today's webinar, and you will get that webinar badge. We do a weekly sort of badge report, and the person with the most webinar badges now has 22 of them. So if this is your first one, you've got a bit of catching up to do, but I'm sure you can do it. So that's yeah, I like that. Yeah, so 22 is someone called Dana. Kenyo, I think, or Kenyo, I think he's from Norway. He's got 20. And then Herman in third is from Burnaby in Vancouver, I think, with 19. So yeah, there's a bit of a race on there, I guess, to see who gets the most webinar badges.
Yeah. And I know, Elizabeth, I think you were going to speak to this one.
Yeah, so our UC is coming up this August 24th to 26th. I believe we still have a couple weeks left in early bird savings, so definitely register for that if you haven't already and you'd like to join us. It'll be an awesome time. I know we're all really looking forward to it. And then also check out safe.com/webinars for other great webinar content, and we have a lot of awesome webinars coming up as well. And with that, it looks like we have a few minutes remaining here. I'll turn back on my webcam for some Q&A. So we can take a look through the question panel now. If you haven't got your question in yet, definitely type that in and we'll take a look. Oh, Mark, I think you might be muted there.
I'm muted. I just realized I was muted as I was talking. If you do join the community and you are interested in the in helping us improve FME, there is a special group on the community called the User Research and Feedback Group. And very often we post in there if there's something we'd like your help on, the particular aspect of FME, we want your opinion or your help about how we could improve it or what we should do with it, or to do a bit of testing. That's in there. So if that sort of thing interests you, yeah, please do join that group.
I know one of the questions we've seen a couple about is an ETA on when we're hoping to release 2022, and we're aiming for the first week of May. So stay tuned. It should be anytime, hopefully.
It should be next week is the first week in May.
Yeah,
so,
exactly. So about a week's time.
I'm thinking a week today. I can't guarantee that, but I think that's very likely when it will appear. Things are pretty rock solid, yeah.
Mark, Andrea, this is Dale speaking.
Oh,
I interject on just one thing I see many people asking about, and it's a project close to my heart, and that's about the rollout of Upsert across more formats. And I just want to tell folks that there is a huge effort going on right now to roll Upsert out to a whole bunch of other formats or databases for the .1 release, which would be late summer or early fall. And so all the favorites are going to be in there. The one that Chris had asked about was GeoPackage, which is based on SQLite, but it looks like that one is not scheduled. And so I will try to find out why we can't do. I have a feeling you could probably just use the SQLite and kind of lie that it's that the GeoPackage is just SQLite, and it would work for many situations, but of course not if there's geometry. But Snowflake is actually planned, but that one may, because it's a little bit more complex, there's merge functionality there, that might come in the 2023. But if you care about Snowflake, do let us know. But the team is planning to do it. It's just not clear if that's going to be in .1, .2, or the next .0. But anyway, big effort going on to roll it out across other databases. Other than that, great job. Pretty exciting to see all this stuff. Oh, someone asked, why do we have vector tiling in the first place? And the scenarios I'm aware about are more for analysis. So you basically take a whole country and make a bunch of grids, and then you can start doing some analysis within a large area. But I'm not sure, Mark or Andrea, in your GIS training, do you recall uses of vector tiling?
I think it used to be more of a thing a few years ago when large data volumes weren't that easy to handle. But yeah, for sure, it's not as a big a deal right now as it probably was. But I mean, the other thing for tiling, and this was a question somebody else asked, was about tiling for web servers like Google Maps and things like that. And we do have a transformer specifically for that called the Web Map Tiler, and that will tile your raster data into the right tiles for a particular zoom level at your mapping application, and it will pyramid all the data, and it will do all of the things you need to apply that data to a web map. So yeah, that would be one reason there. And I guess tiling lets people download data. Like if you've got a data download service, you could download data by tile. That's one way of doing it. Yeah.
The Mapbox Vector Tiler MVT also will prep data into tiles, but that combines that concept with a format as well.
Right. Yeah.
And I see another question about if we can update, insert, and delete. And we do have the ability to do that, and that's with using attribute in FME that you can handle. It's called the FME_DB_operation. We have an article about this, and it's typically used with the change detector so that you can identify what's been updated, what's been inserted, and what's been deleted, and you can write that all to a single writer feature type. Not sure, maybe if Trent can go find that article.
One other quick question was somebody asked about what happens if you've got overlapping clippers or polygons in any way and you want to sort of merge that overlap between the two polygons and just sort of get a plane coverage. And the transformer we'd suggest for that, I think it's called the Area Gap and Overlap Cleaner. And if two polygons are overlapping, it can split that overlap down the middle and assign half of the overlap to each polygon. And if there's a gap down the middle as well, a slither, like a hole, it can cut that hole in half and assign half of it to each polygon each side as it fills it in as well. So that would be that transformer to use.
Anything else there you see, Mark?
I didn't see any other major questions.
Yeah, and if we aren't able to get to your question or you think of one after the webinar, we'll be sure to follow up as well. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
All right, and with that, thank you so much everyone for joining us this morning, and thank you to our wonderful presenters. Try out the FME 2022 beta. I have the link there in the chat, and we will leave things running for a few more minutes here, just in case you'd like to save out any links from the chat or you do have questions. We'll stay on for a couple minutes here, and yeah, chat with us at info@safe.com if you have any questions about data.
Yeah. And there's a webinar tomorrow as well on debugging workspaces, I believe. Yeah. Yep. So that should be a good one.
Yeah, I can share out that link as well. All right. Thanks, everyone, and bye for now.
Bye. Thanks. Bye, everyone.